To me, ADHD is something that you have to work with and not against. Yet there were 3 major mistakes that I was making and I wasn't supposed to. I should know better. And I do tend to sometimes think about the most complicated solution out of a problem instead of the obvious simple thing. But nevertheless, I wanted to make a video for those of you who are still struggling with things like workout, sleep, and food. And hopefully this video is gonna save you some misery and disappointment. So let's go. We're gonna start by talking about gym and how consistency by itself is a bit overrated. Exactly 3 months ago, I made a video on how to befriend your ADHD brain. And there was one thing I was saying there that it is true within that context. I was talking about how doing the bare minimum still counts and you have to keep in mind what the heck is your actual goal and not get distracted by the execution of the goal. For example, if you want to stay active, then going to the gym is just a means to the end of staying active. And if you go to the gym and you just do 30 minutes of low intensity workout, it counts because you're not trying to lose weight or get anything beneficial from the gym itself. You're just trying to stay active and get out of the house. This is true. However, if you actually want to benefit from workout, if the goal is to benefit, then doing the bare minimum all the time is not gonna get you results. So I spent 7 months making myself go to the gym almost every single week, a couple of times a week. So I was really good, like 10 out of 10 on consistency. And I'm really good at making myself do something I don't wanna do. Watch some of my childhood trauma videos, you understand. But point is, staying consistent with the wrong thing and doing it over and over and over again is still not gonna get you anything good. It's still gonna be wrong. So if you have ADHD, you're first of all very likely to get bored if you're consistently doing the same thing that requires almost no effort, because no effort for you means no challenge. The same thing, no novelty. And without progress, because if you're doing the bare minimum as I was doing for 7 months, you're not gonna have increase of good neurotransmitters or hormones. You're not gonna lose weight. You're not gonna get excited about going yet again because you're bored and because this is not how workout works. And second, you're gonna lose a lot of willpower into the consistency that else you could have been using, and in the end, you feel like you have done your best, you are exhausted, but there is no progress, there is nothing to show up for what you have put in. And that can make you very demotivated in general, not just for the one activity, but for about anything else that you're doing. So it's a big no-no. Let's talk about how can you, or how you should work out if your goal is to actually feel good about it, look forward to doing it, eventually benefiting your mental or physical health. I'm not a fitness coach, but this is how I have studied workout in terms of mental health from my biopsychology, clinical psychology, and cognitive psychology. The basic, very simple way to understand it is that you have to go for your targeted heart rate zone. A good heart rate for exercise depends on your age, fitness level, and workout goals. Generally speaking, we have 2 good heart rates, the moderate and the vigorous. Moderate intensity is about 50 to 70% of maximum heart rate, which is good for improving overall cardiovascular health and endurance. Vigorous intensity is 70 to 85 of max heart rate, and it's associated with greater health benefits like increased calorie burn, improved heart and lung efficiency, and enhanced mental clarity. And how can you calculate your maximum heart rate? Generally speaking, 220 minus your age, you get a number, and then from this number you get the percentages to put the moderate and the vigorous intensity of workout that you should aim in order to get the general benefits that those are associated with. And I think it's gonna be a good idea to give you a visual, like one slide of summary of those benefits. Overall, exercise that raises your heart rate releases endorphins and neurotransmitters like dopamine, serotonin, and norepinephrine. These brain chemicals can reduce anxiety, improve mood, and help with your ADHD symptoms by boosting motivation and focus. I know it sounds a little bit too simple to be true, but simple things work. There's just this thing called marketing that aims to complicate things because then you are convinced that you need a lot of things. Basically, if you want to show up for yourself, you are probably thinking that it looks like this. Every single day you are there doing your best. In reality, showing up for yourself and for your goals looks like this. There are days when you show up 100% or 50 or 10 and then again you go back to 100. The whole point of working out being beneficial to you is that you have have ups and downs, but you don't only stay in the down, because it's not gonna give you anything. It's just gonna exhaust your willpower. And if you try to always go for the up, you're probably gonna get so exhausted at some point, and unless it's the primarily goal of your life, you're gonna drop down. And if you think that the maximum is the only definition of success, basically if you just believe in all or none, then of course at some point you're gonna fall to the none and you're gonna get demotivated. And by the way, this is how I figured out I was doing it wrong, and I think this process can help you to identify mistakes that you're making as well. I used to love going to the gym. I used to do yoga, running, and weights, and eventually I messed up my knee because I was overdoing it. I was obsessed with it, and I was pushing so much that it was making me really happy, because the whole resistance exercise, when you're stretching your muscles, this is when you really get the dopamine and when you get the serotonin, and basically when you feel great, when you're challenged. Your ADHD brain loves challenge. I was switching different machines and different exercises, novelty. It was like a game, and it was almost like a self-competition, and it was addictive. And then a few years later, because I had to stop for a while, my knee was in such pain, I couldn't do anything. And then I fell out of the habit, and it took me a while to go back to it. But I went back to it with the bare minimum, and I hated it. And I was sitting there one day thinking, okay, how on earth could I go from loving something to the point of overdoing it to barely making it? And even when I make it, I still don't feel good. I come back home and I'm like relieved. Oh, okay, like the assignment, the chore is done, but I didn't feel any positivity inside me. How come? What was I doing so wrong? I used to do weights. Now I just put myself on a stationary bike and I just do the pedals for like 30 minutes. How could that be? It should be fine. I'm not that lazy. And I was like, oh my gosh, I used to do weights and now I never touch them. I used to actually do something and now I just sit on a bike, which is boring. Sometimes it's okay. Sometimes when you're tired, it's fine. But every single time, no. So if you have lost your passion for an activity that you used to love, think about what were you doing differently back then? Exactly. What were you doing then? What are you doing now? What is the difference? It's either your behavior, or second, what was your environment back then? What is your environment now? Keep it simple. It's either you were doing something different or something in your environment was different, and that made the difference, and that's why you are having a different experience now. Enough of this. Let's talk about food, and specifically sugar. I run on extremes, 100 or 0, and if you have ADHD, you know what I'm talking about. So I used to say with sugar that I have no ability in me to be balanced. I'm either gonna completely ignore it, and I've done this, like for 6 months straight, I'll go without any sugar at all. And then I'm gonna have something sweet, and it's gonna be like opening a Pandora box, and I'm gonna completely lose any I was gonna say respect, but yeah, you kind of lose self-respect when you indulge into the food addiction and the sugar addiction. But anyway, any self-discipline, and I'll go into needing something sweet every time when I eat in order to feel full. Like I will feel hungry until I get something sweet. It's just the food itself never being enough. That horrible addiction with sugar. And I used to say that I'm gonna indulge into it for a little bit, and then I'm go completely avoiding it because there is no middle ground. And one day I was just thinking, again, good old psychology, how it is the variety, the constant novelty that makes it so addictive. It is not about that you cannot moderate the sugar. It's that you are not having just one sugar. You're having donuts, you're having ice cream, you're having chocolate cake, muffins, waffles. There are so many things that you could have and never get bored. Your ADHD brain gets bored when you repeat the same thing over and over again, right? Try to pick up 2 sweets that you really like, even if they're your freaking favorite things, and only eat those when you want something sweet. Restrict your variety and watch out how your craving is gonna go down. And at some point, it's not that you're gonna hate those 2 things. You in general will have less desire for sugar. And as long as you're staying within the same taste, you're gonna get bored with it. And this technique has a name. Again, it is something I've studied, I remember, in clinical psychology, exactly for addiction and how people can get addicted to food and how eventually you can work with them to decrease that addiction. I wish I could remember everything I've studied. But anyway, it is called sensory specific satiety, where the brain gets used to a limited range of foods and stops finding them as rewarding. Simply put, over time, the craving for sugary food will decrease, simply because they no longer provide the novelty that your brain actually craves. Alright, and let's now talk about sleep. And I have to be very careful about this because sleep itself, sleeping routine, it is very important for your mental, for your physical health. But when you have ADHD, there is a little bit of this lesser evil that you have to take into account and sometimes use. Otherwise, things can go really downhill. Do you like change? Not necessarily good, healthy, necessary change, but just change. Like the brain from monotonous life. When you build your routines and everything is fine, you're doing well, it's peaceful, it's healthy, and you hate it. And not sometimes just hate it. Sometimes you get used to it and you go with it for a good amount of time. And then life starts feeling dull, as if you're a zombie that is going through the day doing the right thing, but is not actually alive. And the change is like the waking up moment when your brain is activated because the adrenaline and the stress as well. All of those things are like finally kicking in and you're like, now I'm alive, now I'm productive. Toxic relationships, for example, are really good for that. We're gonna talk about this another time. Sorry for the distraction. Point here is you can benefit from change in the short term, and you can wake up your brain by boosting some mess, like seriously, like creating some mess, and you're gonna pay for it later. But in the moment, you are going to be excited, and you need that. You need it so much. Having ADHD is this constant chase of dopamine, whether it's good or not. It is what it is. And I've learned this through one of my psychiatrists, actually. She really helped me a lot to realize how me living in 5 different countries within like 14 years, it's not something I actually enjoyed, but I was doing because I needed to restart my life over and over again. And it wasn't just that I lived in 5 different countries. It was that for the span of 10 years, I didn't live in the same apartment for 12 consecutive months. I just changed all the time. And for 4.5, 5 years of this time, I was living out of a suitcase because I was just living on the edge all the time, seeking thrill and sensation in order to feel alive. I was completely self-sabotaging any sort of peace, stability, because for me, it was more important here and now, and the long-term thinking was just not there until I realized that it's all ADHD. And once I realized this, I realized I have a choice. And then I was like, okay, my ADHD brain will forever and ever need change. But I have a choice. Either I'm gonna let my brain get the change whenever and however it wants it, or I'll provide change in a controlled environment. Basically, every now and then I choose something that I completely mess up. And I enjoy messing up my sleeping routine for 2 reasons. One, there is nothing really more sweet, to me at least, than staying up all night. I love being awake during the night. Nobody is there to ask anything from me. I'm not anyhow guilty for not doing anything at all productive or useful because it's at night, so I'm not supposed to. I can watch TV if I want all night. And the fact that I can do it means that I usually actually end up doing something productive because I don't have any obligation, no force. I can do whatever I want and I end up doing something good, actually. I really have very productive evenings when, for example, I allowed myself to take a nap, and my naps are like 3 hours. I sleep in the afternoon, early evening, wake up at 8 p.m. and then I stay awake until 4 or 5 in the morning, which is completely unhealthy on a regular basis. But every few months, when I do it, like just 2 days of complete mess, first of all, I feel great. I'm enjoying myself. I love it. Sincerely, deeply love it. I get a lot of things done within those sleepless nights because nobody else wants anything from me, and it's just Evie projects, Evie's interests that take priority. And then the third thing that really helps me is that after that, I'm challenged to fix my sleeping routine again. So it's again the new thing. Every single time my brain completely forgets how it was to have a sleeping routine. So it's like wiped off and I have to start from zero, which is good. It's like a new challenge, a new thing to focus, which at the beginning for the first week, it's somehow interesting, torturing, but interesting. And this endless cycle somehow helps me to stay consistent with my sleeping routine because I allow myself to fuck it up every now and then. This particular thing may not perfectly work for you, but think about ways to provide yourself controlled change, basically a lesser evil. What can you change to give you the adrenaline and the dopamine and the excitement without messing up your entire life? The change is inevitable, yes, and it's gonna either happen internally by your brain being impulsive, spontaneous, and crazy, or you're gonna somehow control it. You have to be smart about it. You have to go with something you can control. Sleep is something I have worked on for most of my life, so I feel it's safe enough to mess it up. Think about something that you feel safe enough to mess up. Don't go for the addiction that you know it's your weakness. Please don't make it harder for yourself than needed, but think about something that you can work with. Thank you for watching, guys. I anticipate that it turned out to be a very long video, but if you would like to watch something else that is similar to this in terms of relatable content that really talks about the experience of ADHD, I'm gonna leave the link somewhere here. Thanks again for watching, and I'll see you next time. Bye.